UK market snapshot. UK markets finished in positive territory yesterday, amid weakness in the pound after data showed that Britain's consumer price inflation surprisingly remained steady in July. Airline stocks. International Consolidated Airlines Group and EasyJet climbed 2.9% and 4.5%, respectively, on the back of news that Germany's Air Berlin had filed for insolvency following years of losses. Shire advanced 1.3%, after the drug maker announced that it had applied for approval to sell its new dry eye disease drug, Gracias, in Europe. On the losing side, precious metal miners, Fresnillo and Randgold Resources dropped 3.0% and 3.2%, respectively, tracking losses in gold prices. Next declined 2.8%, following a broker downgrade on the stock to sell from hold. Hargreaves Lansdown shed 0.8%, despite reporting a rise in its profit for the full year. The FTSE 100 advanced 0.4%, to close at 7,383.9, while the FTSE 250 marginally rose to settle at 19,694.8. U.S. market snapshot. U.S. markets closed mostly lower yesterday, weighed down by losses in retail sector stocks. Meanwhile, the DJIA index ended higher for a third consecutive session. Dick's Sporting Goods plunged 23.0%, after the company reported lower-than-expected earnings for the second quarter and issued a profit warning. Nordstrom, Target and Dollar General dropped 1.5%, 2.6% and 3.8%, respectively. Home Depot declined 2.7%. The retailer lifted its guidance for the second time this year after it posted upbeat results for the second quarter. Bucking the trend, TJX gained 0.8%, after the company's earnings and revenue for the second quarter surpassed market estimates. VF edged 0.6% up, after the company announced that it had agreed to acquire Williamson-Dickie Manufacturing in a $820 million cash deal. The SP 500 marginally slipped to settle at 2,464.6. The DJIA marginally rose to settle at 21,999.0, while the Nasdaq slid 0.1%, to close at 6,333.0. Europe market snapshot. Other European markets ended higher yesterday, as investors' risk appetite increased after North Korea stepped back from its threat to attack U.S. island territory, Guam. Danone rose 1.0%, after a report indicated that activist hedge fund, Corvex Management, had acquired a $400 million stake in the yogurt maker as the latter considered it as significantly undervalued. On the flip side, Air Berlin sank 36.7%, after the airline filed for its bankruptcy proceedings and announced that it was in talks to sell its operations to Deutsche Lufthansa, up 5.3%. Case tumbled 5.0%, after the company warned that it might not fulfill its 2020 earnings outlook due to slow recovery of potash prices. The FTSE First 300 index gained 0.1%, to close at 1,479.0. Among other European markets, the German DAX Xetra 30 rose 0.1%, to close at 12,177.0, while the French CAC 40 advanced 0.4%, to settle at 5,140.3. Asia market snapshot. Markets in Asia are trading higher this morning. In Japan, Japan Airlines has advanced 1.2%, following a broker upgrade on the stock to buy from neutral. Peer, Anna Holdings has risen 0.5%. On the contrary, Dong Quixote Holdings has fallen 1.9%, after the retailer projected lower than expected operating profit for the year through June 2018. In Hong Kong, Tencent Holdings has gained 0.8%, ahead of its quarterly results, as the company is expected to post a 50.0% jump in its revenues for the second quarter, helped by mobile games and advertising on its WeChat app. In South Korea, technology giants, SK Hynix and Samsung Electronics have climbed 1.8% and 2.6%, respectively. The Nikkei 225 index is trading marginally higher at 19,756.8. The Hang Seng index is trading 0.5% up at 27,298.3, while the Kospi index is trading 0.4% higher at 2,344.5. Key corporate announcements today. AGMs. John Lang Environmental Assets Group Limited, Lazard World Trust Fund, Rebold Resources Final Dividend Payment Date Halma, Majestic Wine, National Grid Interim Dividend Payment Date Shoes Own Key Corporate Announcements for Tomorrow AGM South African Property Opportunities plc, Threadneedle UK Select Trust Limited EGM's Fornos Timber Fund Limited. Final ex-dividend date Aberdeen Private Equity Fund Limited. Sterling Park Shares Ashton Group, Cohort, Lazard World Trust Fund, Linsell Train Investment Trust, London Associated Properties, Severfield Final Dividend Payment Date UNI Group Interim Ex-Dividend Date for Imprint Group, Bluefield Solar Income Fund Limited, British American Tobacco, Evraz Ground Rents Income Fund, Hazel Renewable Energy VCT1, Hazel Renewable Energy VCT2, Henderson Opportunities Trust, Ibstock, Imperial Brands, Jarvis Securities, Kennedy Wilson Europe Real Estate, Legal General Group, Man Group, Maven Income Growth 3 VCT, Maven Income Growth 4 VCT, Merlin Entertainments, Millennium Copthorne Hotels, Mobius Income Growth VCT, Nexus Infrastructure, North Midland Construction, Pearson, Cortex Holdings, Reckitt Benckiser Group, Room Secured Direct Lending, Schroeder European Real Estate Investment Trust, Schroders, Scottish American INV Company, SEGRO, Seneca Global Income Growth Trust, Standard Life Investments Property Income Trust Limited, Synectics, 24 Select Monthly Income Fund Limited Interim Dividend Payment Date Murray International Trust, Treat Special Ex-Dividend Payment Date Linsell Train Investment Trust Quarterly Payment Date Fair Oaks Income Limited 2017 SHSNPV Quarterly Ex-Dividend Date BlackRock North American Income Trust, BlackRock World Mining Trust, Brunner Investment Trust, M. Winkworth, Medicex Fund Limited, The Renewables Infrastructure Group Limited Trading Announcements Kingfisher Commodity, Currency Bitcoin Commodity at 0330 GMT today, Brent Crude Oil 1 month futures contract is trading 0.47% to 24 cents higher at $51.04 per barrel, ahead of the Energy Information Administration's weekly oil inventory data, scheduled to be released later today. Yesterday, the contract climbed 0.14% to 7 cents, to settle at $50.80 per barrel, after the American Petroleum Institute reported that U.S. crude stockpiles plunged by 9.2 million barrels for the week ended the 11th of August 2017. At 0330 GMT today, gold futures contract is trading 0.37% to $4.70 higher at $1,278.40 per ounce. Yesterday, the contract declined 0.82% to $10.50, to settle at $1,273.70 per ounce, marking its largest one-day decline in nearly 6 weeks, as the greenback strengthened against its peers following upbeat U.S. economic releases. Currency at 0330 GMT today, the EUR is trading a tad higher against the USD at $1.1738, ahead of the Eurozone's preliminary gross domestic product GDP data for the second quarter, set to release in a few hours. Investors will also focus on the US FOMC minutes coupled with the nation's housing starts and building permits data, both for July, scheduled to be released later today. Yesterday, the EUR weakened 0.38% versus the USD, to close at $1.1735, after Germany's GDP rose less than expected in the second quarter. In other economic news, the U.S. advance retail sales rose more than expected in July, recording its largest rise in 7 months. At 0330 GMT today, the GBP is trading marginally higher against the USD at $1.2869, ahead of UK's claimant count change data for July and the ILO unemployment rate data for the 3 months to June, slated to release today. Yesterday, the GBP declined 0.73% versus the USD, to close at $1.2869, after UK's consumer price inflation unexpectedly remained unchanged in July, easing pressure on the Bank of England bow over lifting interest rate. Bitcoin at 0330 GMT today, BTC is trading 2.45% lower against the USD at $4,058. Yesterday, BTC declined 3.72% against the USD to close at $4,159.93, reversing its previous session gains. In a major development, Bitcoin protocol firm, Blockstream, announced its plan to transmit Bitcoin from space across the world using satellite technology. Separately, news emerged that investment management firm VanEck filed with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission to list and trade a Bitcoin ETF. Key economic news: UK CPI unexpectedly dropped in July on a month basis in the UK. The Consumer Price Index (CPI) recorded an unexpected drop of 0.10% in July, lower than market expectations for an unchanged reading. The CPI had registered an unchanged reading in the prior month. UK core CPI advanced less than expected in July. The core CPI climbed 2.40% on an annual basis in July, in the UK, less than market expectations for a rise of 2.50%. In the prior month, the core CPI had registered a similar rise. UK input PPI remained steady in July. On a month basis, the non-seasonally adjusted input producer price index PPI remained unchanged in the UK, less than market expectations for a rise of 0.40%. Input PPI had dropped by a revised 0.30% in the prior month. UK output PPI rose more than expected in July. The non-seasonally adjusted output PPI in the UK recorded a rise of 3.20% in July on an annual basis, higher than market expectations for a rise of 3.10%. Output PPI had recorded a rise of 3.30% in the previous month. UK output PPI unexpectedly climbed in July. On a monthly basis, the non-seasonally adjusted output PPI in the UK unexpectedly advanced 0.10%, higher than market expectations for an unchanged reading. In the previous month, output PPI had recorded a flat reading. UK PPI core output rose as expected in July on a monthly basis. The non-seasonally adjusted PPI core output advanced 0.10% in the UK in July, meeting market expectations. PPI core output had registered a rise of 0.20% in the prior month. UK retail price index rose in July. The retail price index recorded a rise of 0.20% on month basis, to a level of 272.90 in the UK, compared to a reading of 272.30 in the prior month. Market expectation was for the retail price index to climb to 272.50. UK input PPI advanced less than expected in July. The non-seasonally adjusted input PPI in the UK rose 6.50% in July on an annual basis, less than market expectations for an advance of 6.90%. In the previous month, input PPI had climbed by a revised 10.00%. UK PPI core output advanced less than expected in July. The non-seasonally adjusted PPI core output registered a rise of 2.40% in the UK on a YOY basis in July, compared to a rise of 2.90% in the previous month. Markets were expecting PPI core output to advance 2.50%. UK CPI rose less than expected in July on a YOY basis. The CPI in the UK recorded a rise of 2.60% in July, less than market expectations for a rise of 2.70%. The CPI had registered a similar rise in the previous month. UK house price index advanced more than expected in June. The house price index in the UK recorded a rise of 4.90% on a YOY basis in June, more than market expectations for a rise of 4.30%. The house price index had advanced 5.00% in the prior month. UK retail price index ex-mort int payments rose more than expected in July. The retail price index ex-mort int payments registered a rise of 3.90% on an annual basis in the UK, higher than market expectations for a rise of 3.70%. In the prior month, the retail price index ex-mort int payments had climbed 3.80%. UK retail price index advanced more than expected in July. The retail price index registered a rise of 3.60% in the UK on an annual basis, higher than market expectations for an advance of 3.50%. The retail price index had advanced 3.50% in the previous month. German GDP advanced less than expected in 2Q 2017. The seasonally adjusted preliminary gross domestic product GDP in Germany climbed 0.60% on a QOQ basis in 2Q 2017, less than market expectations for a rise of 0.70%. GDP had registered a similar rise in the prior quarter. German GDP advanced more than expected in 2Q 2017. In 2Q 2017, the non-seasonally adjusted flash GDP climbed 0.80% on an annual basis in Germany, compared to a rise of 2.90% in the prior quarter. Market anticipation was for GDP to advance 0.60%. German GDP advanced more than expected in 2Q 2017 on a YoY basis. In 2Q 2017, the working day adjusted preliminary GDP registered a rise of 2.10% in Germany, compared to a rise of 1.70% in the prior quarter. Markets were expecting GDP to rise 1.90%. Swiss Producer and Import Price Index remained steady in July. The Producer and Import Price Index remained flat on a MOM basis in Switzerland, in July, at par with market expectations. In the prior month, the Producer and Import Price Index had recorded a drop of 0.10%. Swiss Producer and Import Price Index unexpectedly eased in July. The Producer and Import Price Index in Switzerland registered an unexpected drop of 0.10% in July on an annual basis, compared to a similar fall in the previous month. Markets were expecting the Producer and Import Price Index to record a flat reading. U.S. retail sales ex autos advanced more than expected in July. Retail sales ex autos registered a rise of 0.50% on a monthly basis in the U.S. in July, higher than market expectations for a rise of 0.30%. Retail sales ex autos had registered a revised rise of 0.10% in the prior month. U.S. Retail Sales Control Group rose more than expected in July. Retail Sales Control Group registered a rise of 0.60% on a MOM basis in July, in the U.S., higher than market expectations for an advance of 0.40%. In the previous month, Retail Sales Control Group had advanced by a revised 0.10%. U.S. NY Empire State Manufacturing Index rose in August. The NY Empire State Manufacturing Index rose to a level of 25.20 in August, in the U.S., compared to market expectations of a rise to a level of 10.00. In the prior month, the NY Empire State Manufacturing Index had recorded a level of 9.80. U.S. Net Treasury International Capital Tick long-term purchases eased in June. In June, Net Treasury International Capital Tick long-term purchases in the U.S. eased to $34.40 billion. Net Treasury International Capital Tick long-term purchases had recorded a level of $91.90 billion in the previous month. U.S. Housing Market Index unexpectedly rose in August. The Housing Market Index recorded an unexpected rise to 68.00 in August, in the U.S., compared to market expectations of a steady reading. The Housing Market Index had recorded a level of 64.00 in the previous month. U.S. Import Price Index advanced as expected in July. The Import Price Index rose 0.10% on a MOM basis in July, in the U.S., compared to a drop of 0.20% in the previous month. Market anticipation was for the Import Price Index to advance 0.10%. U.S. business inventories advanced more than expected in June. In June, business inventories in the U.S. recorded a rise of 0.50% on a MOM basis, compared to a rise of 0.30% in the prior month. Market anticipation was for business inventories to advance 0.40%. U.S. Redbook Index eased in the last week. The seasonally adjusted Redbook Index fell 0.40% on a MOM basis in the U.S. in the week ended the 11th of August 2017. In the prior week, the Redbook Index had dropped 0.30%. U.S. Import Price Index advanced as expected in July on a YoY basis. The Import Price Index recorded a rise of 1.50% in the U.S. in July, in line with market expectations. The Import Price Index had registered a similar rise in the previous month. U.S. advanced retail sales rise more than expected in July on a MOM basis. Advanced retail sales climbed 0.60% in the U.S. in July, higher than market expectations for an advance of 0.30%. Advanced retail sales had risen by a revised 0.30% in the previous month. U.S. total net tick flows fell in June. In June, total net tick flows in the U.S. fell to a level of $7.70 billion. Total net tick flows had recorded a revised reading of $54.70 billion in the previous month. U.S. Redbook Index climbed in the last week on an annual basis. The Redbook Index recorded a rise of 2.50% in the U.S. in the week ended the 11th of August 2017. The Redbook Index had risen 2.70% in the previous week. U.S. Export Price Index rose in July. On an annual basis, the Export Price Index in the U.S. rose 0.80%. The Export Price Index had advanced 0.60% in the previous month. U.S. Export Price Index advanced more than expected in July. The Export Price Index recorded a rise of 0.40% on a month basis in the U.S. in July, compared to a fall of 0.20% in the previous month. Market expectation was for the Export Price Index to climb 0.20%. U.S. retail sales ex-auto gas advanced more than expected in July on a month basis. In July, retail sales ex-auto gas rose 0.50% in the U.S., more than market expectations for a rise of 0.40%. Retail sales ex-auto gas had registered a revised rise of 0.30% in the prior month. Canadian existing home sales dropped in July on a monthly basis. Existing home sales fell 2.10% in Canada in July. In the previous month, existing home sales had dropped 6.70%. Japanese capacity utilization rose in June. Capacity utilization in Japan climbed 2.10% on a month basis in June. In the previous month, capacity utilization had fallen 4.10%. Japanese industrial production climbed in June, on a month basis, the final industrial production rose 2.20% in Japan. Industrial production had fallen 3.60% in the prior month. The preliminary figures had recorded a rise of 1.60%.